Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC. On today's episode, a manhunt ended. What we know about the man who fatally shot UnitedHealthcare CEO and whether our healthcare system is ready for a shift.
I think you will probably look back at this point and say that this could be the beginning of some major changes in the healthcare industry.
And one regime down in Syria, but what does the next one have in store? Senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment, Karim Sadjapour, on the rebel group's leader.
The only way he's going to get foreign investment from Europe and the very wealthy Gulf Arab countries is if he charts a path which is focused on tolerance and pragmatism, not Islamist ideology.
Plus, Dunkin Donuts is in the air and in your bathroom. And holiday travel season is upon us. The Points guy Brian Kelly has a list of tips to make sure we're all maximizing our money.
60,000 miles on American, you can fly business class to Japan.
Whoa.
I'm CNBC producer Cameron Costa. It's Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, and Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. It's Tuesday.
And let's talk about the story of the morning, story of the day. New York prosecutors charging Luigi Mangione with the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He was arrested yesterday at that McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after that worker there told police he was acting suspiciously. He has now been charged with second-degree murder, criminal possession of a loaded firearm, possession of a silencer, and possession of a forged instrument. He's 26 years old. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. We were just talking about that off air in 2020. He was carrying a handwritten manifesto that referenced the healthcare industry and apparently had, I don't know if this is connected, apparently had a lot of back pain. You know, but you've been reading a lot about his back issues and all sorts of other things. I don't know.
Why second degree?
What did you say?
Why second degree?
Why second degree? I don't know. There's the question about the ghost guns. This was produced
Maybe, yeah.
Apparently on a 3D printer, silencer on a 3D printer.
I think he had a degree in engineering or science. He had a
He had a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and Computer Science. He had a master's
Went to
degree
Gilman,
well.
which is a prep school
valedictorian
in Maryland.
Comes from a very wealthy family.
Family owns a golf course, golf country club.
Had very privileged, very strange.
Very privileged. Apparently, if you really read some of, I've been following him on Twitter now.
I saw my son.
Previous tweets and other things. There is a turn where you can see a sort of more activist-like view about both being anti-capitalistic, but maybe thinking that violence is the answer.
I don't understand
which is really, obviously
there must be some type of
shocking,
fantastical defect in his thinking, though, because his life would have been so great, and it's going to be so bad now, and the other guy was 50 with 2 kids, so you ruin his life. He's dead. His kids got to deal with that. Now this guy's going to spend the rest of his life, likely anyway.
Likely in prison, hopefully. I don't know if we should say hopefully, but hopefully.
I don't understand.
I'll say it.
So it's confounding to me. I don't know how your mind, especially if you're an engineer and you've had all this. He knows how to think. I don't know how you get to that point, knowing what all the ramifications are. It almost reminds me of some people, and it's sad, and it's mental illness that causes suicide. Sometimes I don't think people realize how permanent things like that are. You know what I mean?
It's hard not to think that there's some form of mental illness there to get to that point. People have said it's like another Ivy League graduate, the Unabomber.
And I've been thinking a lot about the for-profit motive. And there are certain things that shouldn't be for profit, like police and fire. Healthcare, it's a discussion worth having because it's your health, it's the loved one's health, it's people get older, it's your kids, it's all these things. So the knee-jerk reaction would be, let's just subsidize everything that's needed. But then when you do that, sometimes the unintended consequences, the outcome becomes even worse. And you could basically argue against the profit incentive for just about anything. It'd be nice if we could pay everyone $1,000 an hour, if we could charge whatever it costs to make something to give it to people so that it wouldn't cost it. Everything would be better if there was no profit incentive, except that it wouldn't. And so I don't know. You could basically take this, though, this dislike or disdain for the profit incentive, and it's not just healthcare. You could go across the board of people that are harmed, or it looks like they're harmed by the profit incentive, but in reality, it's the best system that we have.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the healthcare industry is broken at this point. I think that no matter what political persuasion you come from, you probably look at this and say that there are things that we should and could do to fix things. And I think that conversation is going to take place in Washington.
But there's middlemen involved. There's a lot. If you aren't watching your P's and Q's, it's ripe for abuse. And if you want to cover everything and everything's going to be subsidized, you'll end up paying one way or the other.
But there's no question
it's hard to use a profit.
We're spending more and more and more on healthcare and not necessarly getting better and better outcomes.
Right.
We're getting potentially worse outcomes.
That's where the profit incentive is supposed to help. You're supposed to get better outcome if someone's minding the store.
Look, there are going to be, we talked about this yesterday, but Donald Trump in his conversation with the press.
He doesn't know what to do either.
No, but he did signal out the middlemen and the pharmacy benefits managers, and that is a call you will hear from both the right and the left. If there's going to be some, I think you will probably look back at this point and say that this could be the beginning of some major changes in the healthcare industry. We've already seen some issues that have happened, and there was enough push and populist movement there from both the right and the left to try and come after something. There's a desire to try and fix things and make it better.
Single payer or nationalized health, there are people that think it should be like the police department or it should be like the fire department, where you're not going to make money.
A lot of nations where that is the case.
That's what I mean. And you can look at the outcomes. In some small countries with 7 million people always point to Sweden or one of those.
Where do you land on what has been a revolution in the last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years of private equity just buying up doctors' offices across the country so that they can collect the Medicare and Medicare payments? And by the way, they do this with nursing homes the same way, effectively preying, oddly enough, not only on the individuals themselves, but the government to pay for all of this, and they try to extract as much as they humanly can. I mean, so that's where, to me, there's like the profit incentive, but the profit incentive, it's actually great for the doctor who sells their practice the first time, right? Because he or she thinks that they've worked a long time, they've built this practice, and they want to sell it to somebody else. But then the person who buys it, their motives are completely different and totally unaligned with the patients. They just are. It's because it's a financial business. That's the business. It's the business of making money. It's the distinction between what people actually do and then what. And so it's very hard. I don't know what the right answer is.
And look, there were a lot of doctors' offices that had to get bought up after Obamacare because trying to deal with the paperwork that came through and the bureaucracy, you couldn't do it as a single doctor's office anymore. You had to get wrapped up into bigger things. So there's a lot of issues that have gotten worse over time. I still think we're very lucky to live here where we are and have access to this system, but there are some serious problems with it, and hopefully we can try and make things
get back
better.
to the whole, how much is a doctor who goes to school for 8 years minimum and then specializes, how much is he worth? Is he worth over $1 million, $2 million a year? You would think yes, but then again, with cost pressures and everything else, lately with what you said has happened, a lot of doctors are no longer practicing. They go into biotech, or some of them become financial advisors.
Or they go into different medicine, or they go into plastic surgery, or they go into other parts of the medical system.
Or they have this concierge medicine system, which...
it's just a different business.
Yeah.
Well,
where the money is.
Thank God for the plastic surgeons.
OpenAI now releasing its new AI video generation tool. It's called Sora, and it works similarly to the company's image generation tool, except this. A user can now type out not just what they want to see, but really like a desired scene, and Sora will then return a high-definition video clip. It can also generate video clips inspired by still images and extend existing videos or fill in missing frames. It's remarkable. Services will be included for existing ChatGPT customers, including Plus and Pro. But I will say so far, unlike some of the other services, if you were to say, make a movie of Becky Quick and Joe Kernen and Andrew Sorkin talking about whatever, they will not do that.
Although you look at this, and because they've left enough imperfections, it doesn't look like beautifully finished on everything. It looks real. It looks more real than what I've seen in some other.
Well, it depends what you're seeing is you need. So the prompt matters a lot.
Yeah.
If you were to write handheld camera, so what you're seeing here, by the way, is super sophisticated in that the prompt is you're telling it what kind of camera to hold, often like what the f-stop. I mean, literally like very specific things. You're going to say it's on a dolly. You're going to say it's going to track her. You're going to go, you're going to go in, then you're going to go out. This is what it's got to feel like like this feels very homey.
I guess my point is,
you can make it feel like whatever you want it to feel.
I guess my point is, you can't believe anything you see anymore. Based on how good this is, I don't believe anything you hear, and now don't believe anything you see.
Unfortunately, that's where this is all headed.
Reuters is reporting that Boeing has restarted production of its 737 MAX jet in recent days. The best-selling product for the aerospace giant is seen as a critical component in its financial recovery. The restart comes about a month after the end of a strike by 33,000 workers. And if you're wondering, Boeing shares now trading around $157.62. Year to date, that's down by about 40%. All right. Get ready to get hungry and get a little grossed out about why you're hungry. America runs on Dunkin deodorant. The coffee chain is teaming up with Native on a limited edition of deodorants, shampoos, conditioners, and other body care products. There are 4 scents that are going to be available: strawberry frosted, vanilla sprinkle, blueberry cobbler, and Boston cream. They range from $10 to $14 and can be bought at some retail stores like Walmart, as well as through Native's website. You smell so good, I want to eat your armpit.
That's the combination of like oniony, like BO, with one of those things you just described.
Strawberry frosted.
Is so disgusting. I mean, I thought this would be good for you, a donut-smelling deodorant, although you like just glazed.
Just glazed donuts.
But you know what I mean? It's important you consider your deodorant scent with the mixture of what.
How about you just take a shower before you put it on?
That's a good idea. But there are people, and especially a lot of young people, who think that showering is bad. So
it's also young people are more pungent.
Well, but they're constantly using deodorant as a shower substitute.
Isn't that
what you're talking about?
Lots of young people. Lots of young people think.
Are you talking about? Where are you hanging out besides the gym?
Lots of young people think that it's bad to use soap.
We will continue this conversation during the commercial break. I don't know. When we come back,
are you going to buy deodorant that smells like a blueberry scone?
I am not. It's not on my bingo card.
Tease will be next.
Up next on Squawk Pod, Carnegie Endowment Senior Fellow and Atlantic contributing writer Karim Sadjapour explains the road ahead for Syria after the Assad regime's fall, the other countries in the balance, and the very, very high stakes.
I would say best case outcome in Syria could be something along the lines of Turkey, but the worst case could be very bad, whether it's a Taliban-style government or even a failed state and the resurgence of ISIS.
We'll be right back. This is Squawk Pod with Becky Quick, Joe Kernen, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Here's Becky.
Following the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, the power balance in the Middle East has shifted. Joining us right now with what President-elect Trump's strategy will be navigating these new dynamics is Carnegie Endowment Middle East Program Senior Fellow Karim Sadjapour. Karim, this is completely uncharted territory, and there's a lot of things that are happening and spinning. You know this area so well. Tell us what you think is happening and where we're going to be headed over the next 6 months to a year.
Well, Becky, this is a hugely significant moment that after 50-some years of being in power, the Assad regime in Syria melted away before our eyes. And it does potentially enormously change the balance of power in the Middle East, in that for many years, Iran has been the region's most powerful actor, in that it dominates 5 failing states: Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Gaza in the Palestinian territories. Now Iran has been dealt some pretty significant blows. They've lost Syria, Lebanese Hezbollah, the crown jewel of the Iranian Revolution, has been decimated by Israel. And now Turkey is emerging as a real regional power. So this is a potentially very significant moment in the modern history of the Middle East.
And what are the potential, leadership things that come into this vacuum at this point? What are the potential outcomes? Are they good?
So the emerging leader of Syria, one of the important emerging leaders, is this gentleman, Mr. Jolani. And he doesn't have a background which inspires much confidence, in that he has a background associated with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS. But up until now, he's been pretty pragmatic. He doesn't talk about radicalism. He talks about reconciliation. He talks about reconstruction. And so I asked, my reporter friends who are on the ground in Syria, if they get a chance to interview him, to ask him a simple question, which is, what country does he most hope to emulate? What is his ideal vision for Syria? Because just in terms of ideology, his background is similar to someone who has a background like the Taliban. But when he talks about his vision, it's something more akin to the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. And the reality is that if his goal is really to rebuild Syria, a country has been decimated, the only way he's going to get foreign investment from Europe and the very wealthy Gulf Arab countries is if he charts a path which is focused on tolerance and pragmatism, not Islamist ideology.
Jolani is somebody, though, who has a U.S. bounty on his head. I've heard him described as being very sophisticated, though. How would you advise the incoming Trump administration to deal with him?
He's not the only player in Syria. And as we've seen over the last couple of days, millions of displaced Syrians in neighboring countries are now pouring back into the country. Mm-hmm. I think for the United States, whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration, there's no longer a will in America to try to transform the Middle East into liberal democracy. But there are some important U.S. national security interests. One is keeping ISIS at bay, and there are 900 U.S. troops still in Syria to help keep ISIS at bay. And you also want to obviously contain any chemical weapons the Assad regime has. And you want to prevent Syria from devolving into another failed state, which explodes into more global refugees. So I would say best case outcome in Syria could be something along the lines of Turkey. But the worst case could be very bad, whether it's a Taliban-style government or even a failed state and the resurgence of ISIS.
Karim, having outside investment and sort of coming into the 21st century, maybe we don't have, maybe we don't get a kind of democracy that we're a Western-style democracy, but just bringing in investment and doing things for the Syrian people to raise the quality of life. Is there an individual that would step forward and really want that to happen, or do we get another person that wants palaces and Ferraris and Maseratis and doesn't? That absolute power corrupts absolutely. It seems like. But every once in a while, historically, someone steps up and looks around and says, I love my people and I want what's best for them. Is there any possibility that happens?
It's a great question. I'm always reminded of an observation that Henry Kissinger made. He said that before he went into government, when he was a professor at Harvard, he thought that the individual didn't really matter that much in history because nation states follow their own natural interests regardless of who's in power. And he said that after he served in government, he reached the exact opposite conclusion, which is that actually individuals shape history and individuals have a most profound impact on history. And so sometimes we see people emerge who are able to become great leaders, putting the national interests and countries' economic interests before any kinds of ideology. So far, it's very early days in Syria. We haven't seen that, but God knows this is a country which has experienced one of the most brutal dictatorships and one of the most brutal civil wars of the last half century. And the Syrian people are certainly yearning for someone who wants to rebuild the country and be tolerant, not another brutal dictator or another Islamist commander.
Karim, when you say when you are looking for investments to come into this, you're talking about investments from other countries, not from businesses. I mean, the things are too unstable on the ground right now, I think, to have any businesses that are going to come in and invest at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking about countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, who have obviously enormous resources when it comes to their petrodollars. And Syria has historically been one of the most important Arab countries. And so at the moment, I think that they're watching with great caution at what's happening. But they don't want to see Syria devolve into another terrible dictatorship or failed state. And frankly, U.S. leadership is going to be important here because President Trump, I remember in his first term, he said there's nothing but death and sand in Syria. And he publicly tweeted that we should stay out of it. But as I said earlier, we don't really have the luxury of staying out of it or pulling U.S. troops out of Syria. There's a real danger. Even though there's only 900 troops, there's a danger. You pull those troops out of Syria, you could see in Syria what we saw in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of U.S. troops quickly facilitated a Taliban return. So the reason I say this is that, please.
I think we're heading to the same point here, but what we have seen from this president, this incoming president, is that he does not want to be tangled up in foreign affairs with U.S. troops or with U.S. dollars. Elon Musk tweeted something yesterday talking about how the United States spends far more than the next 10 or 12 countries on investments in foreign aid. If you were talking about an incoming presidency and administration here that is looking to pare back, what does that mean for the outcome there in Syria? If there's not U.S. leadership doing these things, will the countries in the region step in and take over?
That's where I was going with this, Becky, which is that I think, obviously, the United States doesn't want to expend any blood or more treasure in Syria. But those Gulf Arab countries that have the resources to try to rebuild Syria, I think they're going to be taking their cues from the United States in some ways. And whether the United States encourages them or reassures them. Other country which is very key here is Turkey, one of Syria's important neighbors. It's a NATO ally, but a country which the United States has had real tension with. And I think that Turkey is going to be an important partner for the United States in any efforts in Syria. And I think that, frankly, our expectations are very low. As I said, there's no illusions anymore about America transforming any Middle Eastern Arab country into a secular democracy.
Karim Sadjapour. Karim, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, the best companies in travel, which airlines and which travel credit cards you should be leveraging for the best deals, with someone who knows better than most. It's the points guy, Brian Kelly.
There's a lot of pressure. Even with Spirit being in bankruptcy, there is pressure. If Spirit's going to come out smaller, airfares are going to go up, so consumers need to be savvier than ever with loyalty and credit cards.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. Now for a look at the state of the holiday travel season and what is ahead in 2025, I want to welcome a guy that I follow religiously on social media and on everything. The Points Guy founder, Brian Kelly, is here today. They're unveiling the 2024 TPG Awards, highlighting the best companies in every phase of travel, from airlines to hotels and more. It's nice to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's go through the list. What's at the top of the list? Who's the best?
So this year we did data surveys, and we had our editorial staff. We didn't want to just do popularity contests because we wanted to actually highlight the best brands in travel. And I would say the best airline loyalty program went to American Airlines.
Okay.
Because their miles are actually still really, really valuable.
Right.
60,000 miles on American, you can fly business class to Japan.
Wow.
70,000 miles, you want to go to Asia or the Maldives on Qatar Airways. So American.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, so people always equate the airline,
That's way better.
I don't like American as much to fly on. We want to tell people It's not about the flying on that airline. Their loyalty.
So we're not talking about the product.
The product.
Per se.
That's
Is it
not
harder
it.
to get the miles?
No. So American miles are a little bit harder to get. I think that's why they're so much more valuable.
That makes sense.
And they're harder to get because what? And what?
Because you can't transfer in from all the major loyalty.
Right. So what credit card can you use at all, if at all, to attach to this?
The best premium credit card that won this year is a Capital One Venture X. So a lot of these credit cards are now, Amex Platinum is now $695. The Venture X is $395, and they give you $300 a year towards travel. And you get into Capital One lounges with guests still. So what we've seen in the lounge space is the airlines have really cut back. You have to spend $75,000 on Delta cards to get in.
Right.
Capital One, their lounges, they only have 3 right now. There's more coming out, but they're beautiful. And frankly, that card's really only $95.
Yeah, where are they, though?
They have
the Road Warriors
Dallas and Denver, Dulles, and opening up soon in JFK. But they're beautiful. They have Peloton bikes.
Okay, who else is on your list?
So best all-around credit card for, the intro is Chase Sapphire Preferred, which wins year over year, really flexible. No annual fee is the Bilt card, because you can still, from a consumer perspective, earn points on rent, which is most people's largest expense at no fee.
Bilt has come on strong. We had
I saw that interview, yeah. And from the business side, from the consumer side, it's a slam dunk.
You're right. No
fees. So I tell people, keep taking advantage of that.
That Bilt card. I've seen you online talking about the Bilt card.
Yeah. So that's a no-brainer. And best business class internationally, Qatar Airways Q Suites, which is a perennial winner.
You're saying that for the product, it's
for
the best?
Product itself in business class.
What's the best domestic airline in your mind, taking the points piece off the game?
Well, so for economy, it's JetBlue.
Okay.
Even though JetBlue has some operational problems. But I think our message with the TPG Awards this year, we hit 2 days in 2024 with over 3 million passengers. Travel's going to be up next year. There are production delays with Boeing. There's a lot of pressure. Even with Spirit being in bankruptcy, there is pressure. If Spirit's going to come out smaller, airfares are going to go up, so consumers need to be savvier than ever with loyalty and credit cards, and there still are a lot of valuable cards out there for consumers. So I think the message of this awards is don't give up on the points world. In the US, it is still so incredibly lucrative. Ask your friends in Europe. They don't have all these points options.
Is there ever an advantage, ever? So normally if you're trying to take advantage, I know all the tips you've been telling me. You take all the points that are on your credit card, you transfer it to the airline. You don't ever let American Express try to never try to book it through Amex or try to book it through the Chase Sapphire card itself, because you just
transferring points is where you get all the value.
Right. So, but every time I do that, so sometimes you check to see if there's availability.
Yeah.
And then you have to go transfer it, and I'm always scared for this 5-minute window.
Yeah.
Because also you don't know how quickly. Sometimes they say it could take 24 hours for the points to get transferred.
Usually,
and then you're sitting there going, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, do you use PointMe? So point.me/Amex. It's a free tool that'll actually show you live availability. I always recommend using
Point.me. This is news you can use.
Point.me/Amex. It's free for Amex users. It's actually built into Bilt as well. It's like $100 a year or $129, I think, for everyone else. But whether you have Chase or Amex, Citi, Cap One, it'll actually show you live availability. Okay. So and what happens, Amex people will transfer to Delta, but it may be 400,000 miles for a flight. If you transferred it to Virgin or their partner Air France, it's as low as 50,000. So always check PointMe before transferring these huge sums, because there might be a much better transfer partner.
Is there ever going to be, or maybe the airlines don't want to have it, a market for these points?
Well, we'd love to see a Google Flights for awards.
Yes.
But the airlines, look, they want you going into their ecosystem.
Right.
PointMe is the closest thing to that. It's actually supported by the airlines. There are a bunch of other apps that are kind of cat and mouse. The airlines sue them. Loyalty's big business for these airlines. They're now making more money, via loyalty than flying planes. So.
Okay, final question. Do you have any idea how the stowaway made it to Paris? I mean, I've read all the stories.
This isn't a first-time incident. This happens quite a bit.
Really?
Yeah. This is, people slip through. It's human error. But
they did have to go through security. That made me feel marginally better, like the actual security.
Yeah.
People don't dodge the security part. But then they just get on the. That to me is the.
It's crazy. But if you look it up, it happens
without a ticket.
because they like snuck in. The gate area is always crazy.
Right. They did make it through the gate. They did have to go through the.
When you go through security, like
usually they should have two tickets.
You would think so, and this is why I'm a believer. Like, we need more biometrics at all points in airports. Like, the government already has our information. Like, there's no reason why, we shouldn't have more technology verifying facial recognition.
Where are you on Clear these days? How do you feel about it?
Clear's, it's challenging. I'm still a member, but it's not a slam dunk everywhere you go. I know a lot of people are sort of, not happy that they have all these secondary checks. I know.
I have it, but it's more, I use it almost as like an insurance policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have. If you ever lose your ID, Clear will get you through.
Right.
It's also at a lot of different sporting events and venues. So depending where you're based, I think it can still save time for the cost that it is.
Brian, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
That's the podcast for today. Thank you for joining us today and every other day. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, weekday mornings on CNBC, starting at 6 Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from our 3-hour TV show, follow us here on Squawk Pod wherever you're listening. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.